Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Art Republic's Quick Cultural Conversation. Well, today I'm going to bring in a special guest to talk to me. We have Mark McGuire, a retired homicide detective. He's going to come in. He's going to talk about, some of the things that's been going on in Minnesota. Of course, we all know about the shootings, but I want to talk to someone from a procedural standpoint to give us like the real of what was going down, because we know what our eyes see, but we also know what the government is telling us on the other end of that. So I just wanted to get somebody unbiased to come in, give us a talk, let us know what's going on. Everybody, welcome my good friend, Mark.
What up, Dame?
What's going on, sir? Appreciate you joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so there's a lot of craziness going on, of course, like we talked about before we got on in Minnesota. So I wanted to just take a quick minute to pause, take a breather, and talk to somebody who has experience, with, dealing with the procedures of shootings and what, causes for use of force and all those things. So, of course, we could start with Renee Good. It was very unfortunate what happened, how that happened, and how it went down. But can you give me your assessment of that shooting and what you saw and what you think the investigators or the people investigating it will see?
Well, it really depends on how they're going to investigate it. What I mean by that is, are they going to look at tactics? Are they going to look at, I think I've heard them talking about the self-defense issue of her trying to or attempting to run over the officer. There are a lot of things that you can look at with this case. Like I said earlier, tactics, her intent. And the hardest thing about this shooting is, with most officer-involved shootings, it is what's in the mind of the officer at the time that he or she fired their weapon. That's what a lot of agencies and a lot of departments look at, is what was the state of mind, and then you have to add in the tactics, and eventually you go to the experience of the officer, the threat level. Did he or she put themselves in danger? Is there something that he or she did that caused that shooting or could have prevented the shooting? Because we're not out there as cops, as law enforcement officers. We're not out there trying to actively kill folks. So our intent is not to shoot anyone if we don't have to. If you are put in a position to where you have to defend yourself, or you feel you have to defend yourself, then an officer-involved shooting can occur. And I believe that on this case, in my own opinion, it could have been prevented. The officer did not have to walk in front of that vehicle or around that vehicle, because she could have backed over him as well if she had ill intent. I don't believe she had ill intent. I don't know, but I don't believe she did. I believe she was trying to get away from the situation. However, the officer did walk in front of the vehicle, and he fired 3 or 4 rounds in fear for his safety. So he felt, I'm going to say he probably said he felt like his life was in danger. He was going to get ran over, and he fired his weapon at her. Even as she turned away from him, he continued to fire. So those are some of the things I hope they look at. I don't know. It's a federal case. I don't know what their level of investigation as it relates to officer-involved shootings entails. Do they look at tactics? Do they look at how many shots were fired? Do the officers have to account for every shot that's fired? Because I know he fired 3 rounds, even though she has 4 injuries. One of those injuries might be an in and out from one of the rounds that hit her and cause an additional wound. But so he has to account for every round that he fires, and once she turned away from him, technically the threat was over. And if he would have assessed, I can see, this is not a good opinion, this is not a good take, but I can see him firing 1 round as he walks around the front of the car, and then as she turned and she continued away from him. The other rounds were not necessary. You could have fired one round and assessed. And we're Monday morning quarterbacking, and that all depends on training and experience as well. How many times have you been in a shooting? How many tactical situations have you been in? How many tactical situations do you put yourself in? All those things, I hope that they look at all that and determine the outcome of the shooting. So that's my opinion. I don't think she had to be shot and killed. I think it could have been avoided. Again, I don't know what the federal statute, what their policies and procedures are as it relates to vehicle stops. I mean, you had a guy on the left trying to stop the car, grab and open the door. She's trying to get away, and you can obviously see her trying to get away from the guy on the left. She may not even have seen the guy in the front, and even if she did, I believe she tried to wait until he cleared her car and took off, but obviously he felt he wasn't out of the way, and he fired his gun and hit her 3 times.
Well, let me ask you, Mark, if you were what does it look like to you from your standpoint?
Oh, you're breaking up. You gotta repeat that.
I'm sorry. What would it look like for you? How would you were the person investigating?
I didn't get none of that, Dan. The feed is choppy. It's real choppy.
Hello?
There we go.
All right, there we go.
There we go.
All right. Nope. Again. Okay. If you were investigating, what would it look like to you if you were the officer investigating?
When I investigated officer-involved shootings, we investigated it from a neutral standpoint as it relates to the evidence. We take the officer's actions and look at all the officer's actions. And then we come down to our investigation leads up into the time the officer fired their weapon. So you're going to look at, do they have a legal right to be there, the officers? Was the victim/suspect doing anything illegal? Was the victim suspect trying to hurt the officer? In other words, was it an attempt on the officer's life, or attempting to harm the officer, or even attempting to get away? You look at tactics, you look at the victim suspect to see what their background is. Of course, officers don't know what they're dealing with unless they've been given intelligence on your subject, right? Like if you're chasing a murder suspect or a gang member that's an armed gang member, you know what you're kind of going after, right? And you plan accordingly. Once you walk up to a vehicle and you don't know who it is, and everything, your training and experience comes into play. So immediately you would look at, and it depends on how the agencies conduct their officer-involved shootings. For instance, the agency, I work for Long Beach Police Department, so we would lock the crime scene down, right? Separate the officers. The officers would give a general statement of how many rounds they fired and in which direction. We don't necessarily need to know what happened at that point. We let them chill out because officer-involved shootings are very traumatic to officers, very stressful to some officers, and you got to give them time to get their mind together and get their thoughts together so that they could either dictate it, write a report, or be interviewed by a detective to recount the incident. Then you would process the crime scene, how many shots were fired, which direction. And once the officer gives you his or her number of shots they fired in direction, then you start looking at, was it a hit shooting? And in this case, it was a hit shooting. Renee was hit 3 times, maybe 4. So you have her vehicle. You would process the vehicle. You would process the shell casings. You would try to put the officer in a position to where and depending on the weapon they have, which direction, once you find out which direction they were shooting, where the shell casings go, where were they standing, and you do, at least in Long Beach, we do what we call a walkthrough, and the officer kind of walks us through what happened. The vehicle would, in this case, the vehicle moved after the shooting. So you would go back to the point of contact where the shooting happened and try and place the vehicle or cones or something to measure where that vehicle was, how high it was, how long it was, approximately where the officer was standing, and you're trying to reenact that. And then, of course, that vehicle continued down the road where she collided and expired. So you're going to reenact that. You're going to reconstruct, not reenact, but you're going to reconstruct that with photographs, with video, with measurements, collecting the shell casings. What kind of rounds was he firing? Were they legal rounds? And then you start getting into policies for the department. What kind of rounds? What kind of gun? Was his gun legal? Were the rounds legal? Did he hit everything? Right. So the 3 rounds, did they all hit inside the vehicle? Did they all hit the victim? Or did those rounds go down the street? Did they go down the road for miles or 100 yards or whatever? You try to account for every round, for every shell casing that's there. And then, like I said, agencies have different policies on how they do things and protocols. In Long Beach, we don't interview our officers. At least when I worked, we didn't interview our officers. They were responsible for their own report, their own account of the incident. In other agencies, they get interviewed by homicide detectives, and then they ask them questions, about what happened regarding the incident. In that case, you're conducting an interview, and of course, they would have representation and or a union rep to make sure that they're comfortable and that their rights aren't violated. Then you put it all together. Once you do that, once you collect all the evidence on the crime scene, of course, you're going to do a background investigation on the victim/suspect. And you're also going to do just so you know who you're dealing with or who you're investigating on the officers. How many years of experience? How many shootings have they been in? And the experience is field experience, tactical experience, shooting experience. When was the last time they qualified? Did they pass? Those kind of things all come into play. And then we would present that case to a board of supervisors, trainers, tactical people, and then they would talk about the case, talk about the incident, make a decision if it was a good shoot, bad shoot, in policy, out of policy. And then, of course, if it was, at least in the city of LA County, if there's a hit shooting, the district attorney office rolls out and they walk right alongside the homicide detectives and conduct a separate investigation of their own about the shooting. I don't know if the feds do that. However, so you have another set of eyes investigating that case besides the police department or besides your agency. And if there's any criminal aspect to it, was it a legal shooting? And in this case, it's a homicide. Is it a murder? We don't know. It's definitely a homicide. And the difference is a homicide is the killing of one human of another. Murder is the illegal killing of one human to another. Okay. And there's various degrees of murder, first, second, third degree manslaughter, that kind of thing. And that you start getting into intent. So in a case like this, I would put it together, put all the measurements, the videos, the witness statements, different aspects of different viewpoints of where people were standing, and present it to the board. They make a decision on it. The DA's office will make a decision on it. And you either get a filing for a criminal filing or you don't. And in that case, it will be called a justifiable homicide. And it's over. It's done. And then you have civil exposure. There's always the civil exposure for the city, county, state, federal, whatever, and the officer, depending on how they're set up with their union, if they have a union. Does that help?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to see what like the procedure was to get to it. So thank you for that. And then, I mean, next we could talk about the next shooting, fatal shooting of Matt Pretti.
Alex,
I'm sorry, Alex Pretti.
Yeah,
that was crazy. That was crazy to watch. From my standpoint, like I said, I have no law enforcement experience, but from my standpoint, I thought that was just cold-blood murder because I didn't see anywhere where it seemed that he would be a threat. But again, I'll go to defer to you. What did you see in that video?
I saw a victim get murdered. He was attempting to help somebody else. He was pepper sprayed, so that made him that took him out of the fight, if you will.
Right.
If you watch the videos, you can see he's overcome with the pepper spray, and he's just trying to see, and then they take him to the ground. He is not a threat in no way, shape, or form. Everybody's talking about his weapon. Yeah, he had a gun. Nobody knew he had a gun until he got down on the ground, and then it was in his waistband behind him in a holster, and they disarmed him, and then he was shot multiple times. And the first shot, I believe, was to the head or neck area, back of the head or neck area, based off the videos and all the stills.
Right.
And when I first watched it, after seeing all the videos I've seen of homicides and murders and shootings, and actually been on scene when people are shot, that first shot, wherever it was, took him out. He was done. And why they continued to shoot after he was down, I have no idea. So those officers, and I understand there's two shooters, those officers will have to, or should have to, answer for every shot that they fired. You know, even the first shot, where was the threat? Because both his hands were at some point down on the ground, and then he had a camera in one hand, and his other hand was on the ground. So
yeah,
why was he? My question would be, why was he shot? I think it's criminal in nature. The investigation should glean criminal exposure for the officer or officers involved. You know, I talked about training and experience, and if you have, the more training and experience you have, the more hands-on you have, training you have with people, dealing with people, fighting with people, getting people under control, the less likely you are to pull your gun or whatever. And you have tools at hand. You know, you have tools. They had pepper spray. Why didn't they continue to pepper spray them? I don't know if they have tasers. I'm sure they do. Why didn't they tase them? Why didn't they? You know what I mean? I don't know if they have impact weapons, a baton or something like that. But
right.
I don't know why the officer pulled his gun while the man was on the ground like that. He'd have to explain all that. And the investigation should take their time and look at every step of Alex's contact with those officers to find out if there was a threat. That's what they're supposed to do. And if there wasn't a threat, then you have to come back and say, hey, there was no threat. The question is, why did you shoot him? Not just once, but why did you shoot him multiple times? I don't know if it was 5. I don't know if it was 10. I don't know. But I know he was shot multiple times. And he was visibly down and out on his back, I believe, when he received the last few rounds.
Yeah.
You can see him ricocheting off. From my training experience, it looked like the rounds went through him, hit the ground, and was blowing back up his clothes. Or it was just ricocheting off the ground going through him.
Yeah.
Something. But that was I would expect that case to come back as a crime, as a murder, as a homicide. Not a homicide, but as a murder, be it first, second, or third degree. Second or third degree.
Okay, so quickly, what, because I'm sure people want to know, what is the difference between this and the Renee Good that makes this one clear cut and the Renee Good not?
Because the difference is Renee Good was in a vehicle, right? And there's this word called could have.
Mm.
And Renee Good could have ran him over. Or when she went to the right, she could have caught his leg, his jacket, whatever.
Right.
And she could have dragged him, causing him injury.
Okay.
Right? Even though he was at the corner of the vehicle, she could have injured him, right?
Right.
You could have injured him. And then you have to have the question, well, why did he walk in front of the car? Why did he walk around the car?
Right.
If he hadn't done none of that, the whole could have thing goes out the window. But unfortunately, she could have injured him. The difference with her and Alex is Alex was incapacitated. After he was sprayed in the face with pepper, whatever their chemical agent is, pepper, bear, I don't know what it is. But he was incapacitated, and you can see that he is. And then he goes down to the ground. They are hitting him in the head or hitting him, striking him repeatedly, a couple of officers while he was down. And I thought he was getting hit in the head with a gun when I first saw the first few videos. Right. I don't know what he was getting hit with. Was it a gun? Was it a big can of bear spray? Was it an impact weapon? I don't know. And initially, without looking at all the videos, I thought that the first shot that I heard was from him being struck in the head by a gun. But it wasn't. Once the other videos came out, other angles, you could see that the one officer actually stands up, pulls his gun, walks to the top of the victim, shoots him. Alex goes down, and then they back away and continue to fire. So he would have to explain all of that. And there's a second shooter. I don't know which officer it was. I haven't, to be honest with you, I haven't really delved into all the videos. I just know what I saw, the first 10 videos I saw.
Right.
That's a murder. It's a murder. Plain and simple, it's a murder.
Wow. Well, man, thank you for walking us through it. Thank you for giving me.
In my opinion, I should say, in my opinion.
Yeah, of course, you have to say in your opinion.
In my humble opinion, that's a murder.
Yeah.
I would present that case with that evidence to the district attorney's office, and then they would make a decision.
But if you were investigating, you would present it as a murder. You would. I
would present it just as the facts. I wouldn't say murder. I would just present the facts.
Okay.
And let the district attorney determine. Yeah. And then our agency would say, is it a good shoot or is it a bad shoot? Right. Oh. And then the district attorney would make the determination if it was whatever degree of, if a crime occurred, is what I should say. Okay.
Well, it's good to know. Like I said, we be watching Law and Order and all that. So
yeah, we present the facts, good, bad, or indifferent. That's what our job is. I don't care if you're my best friend in the world. If I get called out to a case, and I've had cases where I've handled cases where my people I've been partners with have been shot, or they've shot at people and shot people, and you just present the facts. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Again, you pray that your officers are trained enough that they will all the training. Well, I don't know all the training the feds get, but all the training that I know that Southern California, LA County cops get, we get some great training, on-hand training, tactical training, simunitions training where you're shooting with paint bullets, and it's as close to the real thing as possible, and you get used to that kind of play, right? If you don't do that and you get into a high tense situation, you're going to react how you're going to react,
right?
And you train how you play, and you play how you train, And that's why all the SWAT officers train every week. Your entry teams train every week, at least every other week. No, it's probably every week, because it's muscle memory, and we rely on muscle memory to stay alive and to keep our partners alive. If you're not doing that, if you don't have enough training in that area, you're going to make mistakes, and then your muscle memory is going to kick in, whatever that is. Right? I can tell. I can guess. I shouldn't say I can tell. I can guess that they went hands-on with this guy, and nobody was thinking, let's get him handcuffed. Right?
Yeah.
Where are the handcuffs?
Yeah, never saw.
Nobody's trying to cuff him. They're just going to pepper spray him, beat him, and then shoot him. That sounds bad, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
Pepper spray, beat, shoot. Where are the handcuffs? There were at least 5 of them. How come they didn't pounce on him and handcuff him?
Like, that's one of the most basic things.
You know? So, I train security officers too. And security officers are observe and report. Don't get involved. Don't go hands-on. I don't care if you do have a gun. If your life is not in danger, do not touch that gun.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I thank you again, man. Hopefully the next time we can talk about something different, and we'll have to call you back in for something like this.
All right, very good. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, man. Hope I wasn't too scatterbrained for you.
No. You actually, like I said, you gave us the behind the curtain look, and that's kind of what I wanted to give the people a peek behind, because I know a lot of times we don't understand, and me and you had this conversation before. We'll see something that looks like it's a shoot and it looks like a bad shoot to us, but sometimes you explain it to me from, an investigator's point of view. And a couple of times you changed my mind. You showed me some stuff that I didn't know about procedure. You helped me understand. So I want to see if we can give a chance for you to do that, for some of the people out there who watch this show, so they just could have a better understanding when they see these things, what they're looking at and how law enforcement handles it. So,
yeah, and it's as far as the Renee Good shooting go, like I said, it's an ugly incident, but it could go either way. It could go either way depending on the federal standards of their investigation and the U.S. attorney, what they look at. But again, the could-have is what's going to make it difficult for them to get a filing. Well, I say filing to charge him. I'm not saying it can't happen,
right?
But I doubt that it will,
right?
Just because even though in my opinion, he caused that shooting by walking in front of the vehicle, putting himself in position. She didn't have to take off. People are
but her being in the vehicle gives him that little bit of leeway he needs to get off.
Right, because she could have still hit him, and I'm sure he said he feared for his safety, especially after being involved in one prior to.
Right.
So, but that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Mark, man.
Hi,
we
brother.
appreciate you coming and joining us, Art Republic. Until next time, thank you guys for joining us. This has been another quick cultural conversation. We will see you next time.
Peace.